Now, when you look at your wife, shaped like a woman from paradise, right? And her skin is as soft as a virgin, and her voice, right, it's as sweet as honey. What kind of scientific experiment did you do to appreciate her beauty? Or let's suppose that your wife cheats on you with your brother. How on earth would you justify your feeling? I mean, surely you wouldn't be able to put your morals in a test tube and conduct some kind of experiment to prove that what she did was wrong, right?
We'll understand how chemistry turns into biology by doing experiments. The point is, most societies have a taboo on incest, and it's an empirical one. I don't think the sheep, by the way, which 10% of sheep are long-term homosexual relationships, okay?
What's funny about that? What is funny about that?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. I begin in the name of Allah, and may peace and blessings, his peace and blessings in fact, be upon the Prophet Muhammad. Now, guys, science is awesome, right? I mean, science is the reason that I'm able to wear this really cool tie, right? And science is the reason why you guys are looking at me thinking, wow, what shirt is he wearing? It's Duchamp, by the way, Duchamp, if you guys must know. I can put a link in at the bottom if you know. But yeah, right, science is awesome. It does many good things for us. Advancements in medicine, in technology. And science has actually been able to show us that many things that we previously knew to be true are in fact wrong. For example, right, we used to think that the earth was flat. We used to think that the mountains were there to hold up the sky, and many other silly beliefs like that, right? And hopefully science will, and with the will of Allah, I say, go on to do a lot more, and it most definitely probably will, right? And prove many other things to us that we today think are wrong, to be true wrong, right? But with that said, science has been awarded a kind of absoluteness, as if to say it's the only epistemology by which you can form conclusions of truth. And yes, the biggest culprits of this are the likes of Professor Krauss, right, as you just saw in that video, in the video clip, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and so on and so forth, and the list goes on forever. Many of these kind of new atheists, right? And they take the approach that is known as scientism, that science is the way, the truth, and the light, right? Science is the only way. Now, although, yes, they're wrong, but they're not the only ones. And I want to be the first to put my hand up as a Muslim and say that Muslims in general, and myself included, have actually made the same mistake with science. I mean, with all these scientific miracles in the Quran that you see, although they have an element of like, wow, okay, that's interesting, but not an element of, oh, there you go, Quran is a miracle. Right? And I want to be the first to put my hands up and say, you know what, we actually mistreated science, and we didn't do justice to the Quran by measuring the Quran scientifically, right? And I know that upset a lot of people, a lot of scientists, for example, and I appreciate where they're coming from in that regard, right? And it also upset me, and I've also been guilty of that, so I do apologize, and I want to make absolutely clear that I understand the situation at hand. But with that said, right, that doesn't excuse this kind of absolute nature or alleged absolute nature of science. And what I'd actually like to go through in this video is a few reasons as to some of the restrictions of science, and then go a step further and say one of those specific restrictions is talking about Allah, for example, or the divine creator. And that's for and this is one of the things that, for example, many of the atheists like to do, like Richard Dawkins and Professor Krauss. They like to bring in science as a means by which you can disprove the divine, or vice versa, right? And hopefully I'll be able to shed some light and show how the hypothesis of the divine is not a hypothesis that science can actually cater to. Now, I just want to highlight here, right, that Professor Krauss doesn't actually know what I'm about to explain, right? And I don't mean this out of arrogance, but I'm going to play a clip for you guys that you can see that the scientific method, although many scientists actually are use it on a day-to-day basis. They don't actually understand the philosophy behind it. And that's quite dangerous, because if people like Professor Krauss can get it wrong, then what about people like me and you, right? I mean, we look up to these people, we read their books, and we follow what they say. And if they themselves don't realize the limitations and the scope of science, then it's going to reflect on us. And an example of this is in the debate when Hamza Tzortzis said to the Professor Krauss, that he sees authentic testimony or valid testimony as a way by which you can form conclusions of truth, right? And Professor Krauss was almost disgusted at this. He was like, don't say that you that you support authentic testimony. Like, what are you talking about? And Hamza said, listen, don't dig a hole for yourself that you're not going to be able to get out of, because science uses and heavily relies upon authentic testimony. And the professor was like, nope, we do the science and I do the science, and so on and so forth. And Hamza said, okay, fine, let me give you an example. Do you believe in evolution? And the professor said, of course I do. And Hamza said, have you done every single experiment on evolution? And he said, no, I haven't. And then Hamza said, there you go. You believe in the authentic testimony of scientists that have already done these experiments, and you rely upon their testimony. If you didn't rely upon their testimony, then, we'd never get anywhere, because everyone would have to go back and do every single experiment, and there's far too many experiments for us to go and do personally, right? So we have to rely upon the results and the authentic testimony of those that are around us. So, you guys can see the clip now, and that will hopefully shed some light on the matter.
I'm trying to show you there's other routes to knowledge, sir. Which
That's
is
not knowledge.
Such as, so testimony, for example.
Oh,
authentic
testimony.
and valid testimony.
Oh my goodness. You really believe in testimony as proof of do you really believe that?
But Professor Krauss,
Do you really believe that because I say
let's not dig a hole for ourselves.
someone did something, it happened?
Go to the Berkeley website on the scientific method. It says one of the majority
I don't
aspects.
go to websites, I just do science.
Yeah, okay, well, that's very great. Well, do this science then. Listen to this science. The Berkeley website says the key part of the scientific method is also the workings of other scientists that
you test and you don't trust,
Yeah.
and you repeat their experiments because you don't trust.
Yes,
the
I
results.
agree.
That's
Wait,
the way science works.
but there's a lot of science.
You don't trust other people's results.
Excuse me, sir. There's a lot of science that requires testimony. Yeah.
What?
Lots of science.
What?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Have you done every single experiment concerning evolution?
No.
So you believe it's true? Thank you very
no,
much.
I don't know.
What else do you want to say?
Okay, so the limitations of science, and because of time and because I want to keep your guys' attention, right? I'm not going to go into it in too much depth, but you're more than welcome to look into it in your own time. The induction, right? Induction is inherent in the scientific method, and it's one of the reasons why we have to accept that science actually does have a scope, it does have a limitation. What is induction? Induction is basically you making an observation on a specific occurrence or a specific set of data. And then you take that observation and you apply it to the general. What do I mean? For example, if I was to say that there are 100 white sheep, and I've observed 100 white sheep, and I haven't seen any other sheep in the world, then I would conclude on the basis of induction that all sheep are white. But am I right? No, I'm wrong, because you can have black sheep, right? And I think you can have brown sheep as well. I'm not sure. But the fact, that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is that I don't know that immediately. And then when I go and I observe the black sheep, then I'm like, oh wait, there's like black sheep as well. You see what I'm saying? And the more facts that you find, the more you kind of adjust the inductive method. Now, you can never have 100% certainty in the inductive method. You can only have 99%, always less than 99%. And although you can have a very high probability, but the fact of the matter is that induction will always be probabilistic. It will always be down to what is most likely the truth. And that's how science works. You make an observation on the set of data that's present, or whatever's happening, and then you apply that to the general. You take specific and you apply it to the general. So from that we can see that there is a limitation to induction. It's not ever going to be absolutely certain. Then we have empiricism, and this is something that causes a major issue with regards to people like Professor Krauss, unfortunately, and Richard Dawkins, who affirm that science is the way, the light, and the truth, because on top of induction, empiricism is the way by which scientists come to know the truth about something. And empiricism is knowledge that is attained or obtained via your senses. It's knowledge that you experience through your eyes, through what you hear, through what you see. I mean, really, if you want to touch it, you want to lick it, you want to smell it, you can go ahead and do that, right? That's basically empiricism, knowledge that you know through experience. But see, look, we have a problem here, because if I say to you, right, that it's snowing outside, and in my house I have a very white, fluffy cat, like white as snow, so white that we called it Snowy, right? And I open the door, and the cat, it jumps into the snow. And now you can't see the cat because it's been camouflaged and it's inside the white snow. You can't actually see the white cat. Now, as an empiricist, a hardcore empiricist, right, who says that science is the way, the light, and the truth, and the only way to know things is through the scientific method, empiricism in other words, then you would have to deny that the cat is in the snow. But that would be stupid, because the cat is in the snow. I mean, I saw it jump in the snow. Just because I can't actually see it right now doesn't mean that it's not there. You follow me? So in this regard, what we can actually come to conclude is that there are things that we know to be true even though we can't observe them, right? And an example of this is morality, for example. As I mentioned in the previous video, you can't observe morals, but does that mean that morals don't exist? I mean, that's something that science can't talk about. Another example of this is aesthetic beliefs, which is why I gave the example at the beginning of the beautiful wife, right? I mean, science can't tell you what you perceive to be beautiful or how much you love someone, right? Another thing that science can't actually comment on is maths. And that's quite surprising, because maths, physics, for example, it relies upon maths, right? It's based on mathematical axioms. So for science to go and try and prove maths scientifically would be tantamount to science going around in a circle, because it depends on it in the first place. If there's no maths, really, there's no science. And here's a really interesting one, right? Something that science can't justify scientifically is the statement that science is the only way to truth. Because that itself is a metaphysical statement. I mean, how would you go about taking that statement and observing it and putting it through the scientific process and coming up with a conclusion, a theory, and saying, yeah, you know what, we've concluded that science is the way to absolute truth. And it's actually interesting, because eventually, when Hamza called Professor Krauss out on these things, Professor Krauss admitted, you know what, science can't tell us what's right, but science can tell us what's wrong. And you know, hats off to Professor Krauss for actually admitting that. And I sincerely admire that, for him to actually say that. But I just want to, because I mean, but we don't expect people to change their beliefs straight away. It felt like Professor Krauss couldn't completely divorce that idea and what he was saying, but intellectually speaking, he understood, right? Now, I just want to, okay, and finally, right, the main thing that I wanted to come to. Science can't talk about, the same way it can't talk about aesthetic truths, moral truths, mathematical truths, science can't talk about metaphysical truths, right? What is a metaphysical truth? It's something that goes beyond physics, beyond the natural world, right? In other words, Allah, the divine creator, the miraculous nature of the Quran, for example. These life after death, these are all metaphysical issues, right? They're not part of the natural world, and science is a study of the natural world, as any scientist would affirm. Even Bertrand Russell, he defines science as a study of the natural phenomena and the natural world, right? So scientists like Richard Dawkins, who come out and write things like the God delusion, we've disproved God, or a universe from nothing. As Richard Dawkins put in the afterword of Professor Krauss's book, we have put the nail in the coffin, pretty much the nail in the coffin of the last stand of the theist, right? That kind of, ontology is what they were pushing. I mean, as scientists, you can't do that. You don't have a right, right? I mean, stick to the science, and you're doing some amazing things there. I mean, look at the stuff that Professor Krauss has done in the field of, theoretical physics and as a cosmologist. I mean, some amazing stuff. And Richard Dawkins in his field of biology, you're educating us, and I really appreciate that. But please, right, don't go where you can't go. Because in essence, it doesn't reflect very well on your part, because at the end of the day, you're academics, and we look up to you guys, right? And I just want to conclude on this point. Professor Krauss kind of had this crude view that Islam and science are in conflict. But actually, that's totally not true. Because not only is Islam and science not in conflict, but the fact that science is what it is today is heavily dependent upon Islam. And Hamza actually mentioned this again to the professor, and he admitted it to a degree, but what he said was, there's a link between the Arabs and science, but not Islam and science, right? And Hamza pointed out the link. He said, look, the Quran goes and it tells you, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. The Quran says, do they not look to the camel? Do they not look to the sky? Do they not look to the earth? Do they not look to the mountain? And see how these things are developed? Do they not reflect upon it? Don't they refer to the cosmos? Do they not look at the heavens, at the stars, the moon, the sun? And the Quran is constantly referring to the natural world. And Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, may Allah have mercy on him, an illustrious scholar of the Islamic tradition, actually stated very clearly and categorically, and he was around at what would be the medieval times in Britain, but in the Arab world, right? He said that Allah, our Creator, has given us two books. One is a closed book and one is an open book. The closed book, in fact, is the Quran, and the open book is the world that is around us, right? And both books are read in reference of each other. And to go a step further, to show the kind of things that Islam did for science, I mean the scientific method for one, came from Muslim scholars as a result of what Islam actually encouraged them to do. For example, Ibn al-Haytham, may Allah have mercy on him, right? He in his book of Optics, he developed what is known as the scientific method, right? And we actually use this method today. People like Galileo and Francis Bacon did refine it, but the basis of what they actually had to work upon and develop started from the Muslims. And to go out there and say that it was developed by the Greeks is a great injustice that history has done against the Muslim scientists and scholars. Why? Because the Greeks, of course, we affirm that they were the first to study the natural world or the natural sciences, but the way that they did it was in no way structured enough for you to refer to it as a method. The method was devised by the Muslims. So in conclusion, what have we discussed today? We've discussed that science can't talk about the existence of the divine creator. So scientists that are atheists, such as Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Professor Krauss, unfortunately, they're out on a limb here, right? And hopefully people that follow this kind of narrative will take a step back and think twice before they listen to what they say on these topics, because they actually are not qualified to talk on metaphysical issues. The second thing that we discussed is Islam and science are not in conflict. And the third thing that we hopefully came to appreciate was that whether you believe in Allah or not, you have to thank Allah for science. And that's quite interesting. So be grateful, right? And as Allah says in the Quran, if you are grateful, I will increase you. And if you're grateful, whether you believe in it or not, I pray that He increases you in science and more technology, right? So I'll leave it there, guys. It's Imran ibn Mansur. Please click the like button, subscribe to the video, comment below. I would love to engage with you guys. If I've made any mistakes, please do correct me, right? You can catch me on my Facebook or my Twitter, right? I'd love to be corrected if there's any mistakes I made. It's all an educational process, and we're open to criticism and we're open to ideas, right? So you guys have a great day. Take care of yourselves, and may we all be guided to the divine. Ameen. Peace.